Plus, it's just a basic right. That we are used to exercising here in the United States in so many areas.
It is. It's unfathomable that there would be legislation under the guise of free choice and under the guise of job creation that strips away the secret ballot. But another point you had mentioned a couple of onerous provisions.
Arbitration.
Arbitration.
Now that's kind of unless you've been through an arbitration process, that's kind of mysterious, isn't it?
Exactly. And the legislation says that if the entrepreneur or business isn't able to come to an agreement with the union within 90 days, that the contract, the decision-making authority goes to a labor bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. to decide how everything's going to shake out, and which basically, if you're a negotiator, if you're the labor union, it's here's our contract, sign it, or we'll see you in 90 days.
Right.
And they go back to.
There's no incentive. There's no incentive to working it out
right.
If they know it's going to be drop kicked in 90 days to some goon over in Washington D.C. who's sitting in a cubicle deciding the fates of entrepreneurs.
Well, and you touch on a point there. I think nobody looks to Washington D.C. for its exceptional management style and
there's some oil right now that's floating around in a body of water that speaks to that, McKay. Absolutely.
And so just the notion that I, as a small business, or thousands of Nevada small businesses who are struggling every single day just to keep the lights on, would have their fate rest in the hands of a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., who's probably never set foot in their business, let alone Nevada, is truly frightening. In a number of these businesses, labor costs and personnel is one of the highest components of their expenses. So to have all of that shift over to an arbitrator who's going to determine staffing levels, compensation levels, how you can promote somebody versus not is frightening.
McKay, we're sitting here with 14% official unemployment, 22% real unemployment probably. The one thing that we're, and desperate is understating it, the one thing that we're desperately trying to do is create jobs.
Right.
And can there be any greater disincentive to a person who may empty out what's left in their bank account to give it a go? Maybe they lost their job somewhere else, and this is their shot to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
It's the time in life where they might as well just go for it. Is there any greater disincentive than looking up the road and saying, "Oh my gosh, I could be in business for, just barely open the doors, and if somebody convinces my handful of employees that they should unionize, that's it. I could be out of business like that. So why in the world should I even try?"
And that's exactly why our organization has come together, and specifically now, because times are so dire, and with the elections coming up, every candidate out there is talking about jobs, and the kicker is, where do they actually stand on job creation? And part of the purpose of our organization is working to learn where candidates for federal office stand on this legislation and inform the voters about it, so that at the end of the day they can cut through the rhetoric and cut through the stump speeches and see, wait a second, on this, the number one issue that's facing our state today, far and away, where do they actually stand on legislation that not only would not help job creation, but would destroy job creation?
Sure, absolutely, and vital. It's one of the things that I personally will take responsibility for not having that discussion with dozens of elected officials or candidates that have sat there in the co-pilot seat where you're sitting there. And maybe you can just feel the history just emanating from that chair. McKay, I'm sure you can. The vibe is just...
The gravity.
The vibe's incredible, babe. Yeah. But we've been talking more about the deficit than jobs, but jobs is super important. And the only reason that we haven't talked a lot about jobs is because that seems to be such a private sector initiative. But there is a tremendous amount of damage, as you have said, and disincentives that can be created by elected officials.
Exactly.
That can keep the private sector from stepping up and taking the risk and the chances that they need to take.
Yeah, there is a forest fire out there right now in the private sector that's burning down jobs, and this legislation is just pouring gasoline on that fire.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough times. I want to remind everybody, it's 20 minutes to the hour of 8 o'clock here at Steve Wark in the Morning. We're just here to help you get your work on. You can give us a call at 866-6700, 866-6700, about 85 degrees outside. We got McKay Daniels with us in the hot seat, and we're talking about jobs, and some federal legislation that is kind of coming to a boiling point, I think, in Washington, D.C., that will have a tremendous impact as to whether or not people will actually be able to, afford to keep their businesses or even want to start businesses that will create jobs in the first place. And that is the EFCA legislation in Washington, the Employees Free Choice Act. This very aptly named.
Right.
Very aptly named.
The phase 2 of that, they're going to have kittens and other things.
Yes, of course, and cotton candy.
Right.
Yes, indeed. Now, you said there's a third component of that nasty little piece of legislation.
Well, and the third component is under the guise of, quote, leveling the playing field, as the union bosses have been saying. It goes in and dramatically increases the penalties on employers for any noncompliance that might happen during the unionization process, but doesn't do anything for the unions who.
Yeah, and interesting point. A lot of folks don't understand if they haven't been in an environment where their workplaces has been attempted to be unionized. It can often turn into a pitched battle. It really can. I mean, there's a lot at stake. Least of all the employees themselves, and oftentimes the battle seems to gain even more importance than the whole idea of employees changing their workplace environment and things. And so there are employers that can step over the line and have stepped over the line. There are union bosses and organizers that can step over the line. I mean, this is a pitched battle for the survival of a company.
Right.
Is really what it is. And it's not uncommon for complaints to be made by either the management of the company or by the union organizers as to the rules that are being broken by each side in the middle of this. Now, you're saying that one of the three of the onerous components is how these complaints are adjudicated.
Right. It'll be a technical foul for one team and 2 points on the scoreboard for another. I mean, the same activity, and that it's just going back to the card check provision, grossly unfair.